Welp, the time has finally come to install this Blitz DSC Plus to my Blitz coilovers. First thing you're going to have to do, obviously, is take the wiper cowl off to access the strut towers. And you're going to need to use the provided thread locker. On the Honda Fit, it uses these cables that relocate where the motor is going to go. Easiest way to do that is pull the bottom piece out of it, thread that on first. You're going to want to tighten it down, not too tight though. German specs. It's got a little hex log that goes in there. That's what actually turns the dampers. And then that piece screws down on top of that, linking them together. Then the cable will attach to that piece. After you get it tight, you're going to want to make sure not to have it in the way of anything that's going to be around there. Because if you own a Fit and have taken one of these apart before, you know the wiper motor sits over the top of that strut. So you're going to make sure that that comes out in a way that it doesn't interfere with where the wiper motor is going to sit or move around. The cable has a little hex inside it. You're going to make sure to line that up. It's probably good to put thread locker on everything that's going to be tightening down like that. I wouldn't use too much of it, just a dab of it here and there. And then on this end, I took the end of that off and then put that into the motor assembly. I found it was easier to do it that way. And then slide the cable end back into that, tighten everything up. And you've got this little rubber boot that goes on top of the motor to protect it. It's kind of a pain to get on there. You may have to get some kind of like flathead to help you out, or a pick tool, something like that. You just got to work with it and get it on there. And there it is. And then this piece has to be mounted because it is a motor and it's going to move around. It needs to be secured somehow. It comes with these brackets. I found the best place to actually mount these brackets was at the bottom of the wiper cowl. There's a metal plate that goes across there. If you have that plastic cowl off, it's kind of easy to just mount it underneath there. So I lined it up where I wanted it. You can't put too much of a radius on the cable, otherwise it will strain the system. Could bind up and whatnot. So I found a good spot for it. I lined up where my holes would be. And then I had to get the drill out and drill some holes. Now that bracket came with the kit. It also came with nuts and bolts to mount it. So it's not like I had to run out and get anything or do anything crazy other than drill a couple of holes. So once those holes are drilled, then you just line your bracket up and put the bolts and nuts through there and tighten it all up. And that's that. Moving to the passenger side now, it was much easier to do. So much more room over there. I was able to put it together with the cable attached to it instead of separating it into two pieces. In general though, it's about the same. Still got to do the same things. Mount your motor to the cable. Find a place for the motor to mount. Drill some holes. Mount the bracket. One thing I would warn you about the thread locker, just be very careful not to get it inside the strut or on the little hexes that move inside the cables. You want to make sure to only get the thread locker on the threads, like on the outside of it. Don't use too much of it, you don't want it overflowing into anything. You're gonna have a bad time if that happens. Now, for the back, it was a little different as you're gonna be putting the motor directly onto the strut. And after Google translating the directions, it sounds a lot harder than it really is, but it's not really complicated. Basically, you're just going to try to line the inner hex piece up. It's the middle shaft of the motor. You got to make sure it lines up, and then you thread the motor. You basically twist the whole motor on there, and then you take a flathead screwdriver to tighten the middle of it up so it goes down into it all the way. It was actually super easy. Just don't overthink it. Also, the cables that come with everything are super long. You're gonna have plenty of cable, so don't worry about how you're gonna route it or anything. There's a ton of cable in there. It doesn't really matter how you route it from the back to the front. You got plenty. You could do a lap around the car probably. Maybe not a lap, but plenty of cable. Now on the right side, or the passenger side as I like to call it, I didn't take the side panel off at all. I was able to do everything just from the access cover being removed, and then I just kind of routed my cable up to that hole. I did have the floor of the trunk removed, which makes it easy to work around things. The back plate that goes across the trunk is plastic. It just pops straight up if you want to access that. But on the driver's side, or the left side of the trunk, I did have to pop the interior panel out some to get access to it. And the reason being there is because there was not enough room for the motor to spin to tighten down. But there is enough room for the motor to sit in there. So after you get the passenger side mounted down, you can put the panel back on over it and it sits out. So at this point we're going to be routing our wiring up under the hood from inside the car. That's going to go to our strut motors. You'll notice this harness up above the steering rack and to the right. There's a little nipple on it. You can cut that nipple off. It'll give you a nice little hole to run your wires through that grommet. They'll come out the other side. Perfect. And then you just route those, plug them into your motor plugs, zip tie everything up, you're good to go. Then for the wiring, you're going to have a few wires that hook up. Constant power, we're going to have this red wire coming off of the fuse box, the thicker red wire. That's your constant power. That's going to go to the yellow wire on your harness for the DSC. Then the two wires at the cigarette lighter plug, that can be your ignition and your ground. The purple wire there is your ignition. That's going to hook to your red wire on the DSC harness. And then the black wire is your ground, and you're going to hook the black and the blue wire from the DSC onto your ground. I don't recommend using the taps that come with the kit. I would definitely recommend military splicing, like you can see in this video, where you strip the wire back a little bit, poke a hole in it, thread the wire through, wrap it around, and then tape it up. It's just a much better connection than using the Scotch locks. Now the kit does come with a speed sense wire, it is not necessary to hook that up. You don't have to hook it up. I chose not to hook it up. It's not something that has to be done. If you're trying to do a more advanced setup for track use, then you might want to use that. If you don't want to use the speed wire and still want the benefits of the speed signal, you can order a GPS antenna that can plug into it. For me, I'm fine with just being able to change the settings from inside the car and not have to get out of it and go around. That's really all I wanted it for. But it does have other features that you can buy add-ons and do more with it. I just didn't go that route in this instant. The default setting on the unit is to not have a speed sense wire hooked up. So if you do hook it up, you have to go through the menu settings and turn that feature on. And there it is, all done. I chose to have the cables come through the service holes. I just thought that was the easiest thing. Mounted the controller right underneath the air conditioner in front of the shifter. It seemed like the best spot for it. I went through the initial settings. You'll have to Google Translate the manual and kind of read that. It's not very hard to do. I kind of play around with it a little bit. When you first set it on, you'll hear all the motors go through. They basically cycle through it, setting themselves up. And then you can go through the different settings. I chose to set mine all at 13. I was riding around with them on 10 manually. And I just stiffened it up just a little bit. And now I have the option to make it softer or a harder ride anytime I want. And that's cool. Well, now you've seen that it can be done. Seen what's involved. Now you can do it yourself. If the video was helpful, hit the like button. If you want to subscribe, that'd be cool. Until next time, keep on car modding.